Right, here we go. Music down. Let's get started. How is everyone? Hey, Rick, how's it going? I hope that you liked my little special live stream that I did last week about the board game that I'm designing called Oregon Way. VOD's on Twitch and will soon be up on YouTube if you want to watch that and you haven't yet. Yeah, Wednesday good. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Wednesday good. All right, where are we at? So, hi, I'm Morgan. My pronouns are they and them. I don't know why I keep sticking the word or in there. It's they and them. This is my tabletop RPG and board game channel. And today is going to be my world building show where I write the player's guide to Kinde, which is the name of my homebrew setting. The board game is going well. Obviously, I haven't looked at it since the last time that since last week, since we looked at my notebook on stream. I think, as with a couple of other things, because I want to be able to share them with you on stream, I've been avoiding doing them outside of the stream unless I need to for the stream. Like, for instance, like writing up full texts of things that we were outlining here on stream with the player's guide. I'm sure there'll be things that once changes have decided to have decisions have been made about changes on the board game, then I'll be doing some things offline. But it'll still, there'll still be a lot of things to save. Which means, of course, that in between shows, there can be a huge gap of stuff I've not been doing. Like I haven't touched my punch needling in a while because I'm really looking forward to working on those projects on a stream with you. I possibly need to rethink that idea because I don't think I'll be doing that one very often, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I've been pretty busy lately just trying to get a handle on the new schedule with all of the streaming and everything, and learning about streaming and planning for the future of what I'm going to do and how I'm going to improve the stream, and trying not to run away with myself. I have a real problem with that when it comes to projects, of which I picked up another one as well, not related to the stream. And I'm the kind of person who gets a bit obsessive over a new project and wants to do all the things now, wants it to be perfect yesterday. And so I'm trying to learn to slow my roll, especially when it comes to working with other people on a project. It can get really tough for me to just set it aside, and let it be and not think about it. And I know that I've probably hindered some like group work in the past because I've maybe thought a bit too far ahead, been reading ahead. Yeah, I was that kid too. I was the kid who read ahead, most definitely. That was all me. Let's see. So I still haven't finished fixing up episodes 2 and 3 with their weird syncing issues. I've just not quite figured out a simple way to deal with that. So for now, that involves me going in and minute by minute just moving the audio around, which is not fun, especially for a 2-hour stream. So what I've done is I've just gone ahead and I've edited the episode 4 and I've uploaded that to YouTube. And I'll be doing that with 5, and then this one's 6, and also the Oregon Way one. Orgeron Way one. So I don't know when I'll find the time and manage and patience to edit episodes 2 and 3. But they'll get up there eventually. Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. Let's see. It is, as always, if you have any tips or tricks that you want to share with me, any suggestions for what I can do to make the stream better, DM me on Twitter. It's Tempest TT Games on Twitter. Okay. So on today's show, we're working on the Player's Guide to Kinde again, which is my non-D&D unknown system homebrew RPG setting. I use a particular piece of software to do all of my GM binding and preparation for that, called Scrivener, which is a writer's tool. It's particularly good for academic writing and nonfiction. And I also use World Anvil to display my player's guide when it's finished. So if you go to my name on World Anvil is Of the Tempest, all one word, Of the Tempest. And that's where you will find Kinde's player's guide. Right now they have a bunch of discounts going on memberships, and I didn't previously have a membership, but they had a good discount on their lowest level one. It's like £24 for a year. So I went and I bought that just to try it out, and that'll give me more options for how many pages and drafts and stuff I can have, because the free version has a limit on drafts, and that had become a problem for me before. £24 is pretty good for a year. They currently actually have an unlimited subscription at their highest tier, or rather an infinite what do they call it? What's it called again? Lifetime subscription, going for $400, which actually strikes me as I suppose a good price considering what their subs cost. Yeah, it's a good price, but as far as what they're offering, I've not really got a handle on the cost of these sorts of entirely digital things yet. It's something that my brain hasn't quite mastered. I think that's where I'm sort of at an odd age, where I think all of my youth was sort of pre-digital, and yet I was learning all of that as I became older, and so I'm quite tech savvy. I mean, I'm doing a Twitch stream right now, but I think the foundations of my brain are still quite analog. So the cost of things like that kind of throws me a little bit. I'm very hesitant to sign on for anybody's Patreon, because I feel like if I sign on for one, it's opening the floodgates to signing on for another and another and another and another, and before you know, you're spending 50 quid a month, and not necessarily taking advantage of all of the returns on that money. I mean, it's an absolutely excellent purpose. I mean, please support these people. we need to encourage the internet of art, the internet of creators, all this crazy, wonderful stuff that's going on in this world that doesn't quite know how to handle it yet. Keep supporting those people, but for me, I haven't quite figured out how to wrap my head around it. I need more free income. So, I don't know, maybe I'll be starting a Patreon soon. We'll see. I mean, that said, I did sign on for Minecraft Realms recently, which is another one of those tiny little weird subscriptions, like £3.49 a month, to be able to upload your world onto their server. But that has already shown itself to be super useful because I play on Bedrock, traditionally on my Xbox, and anybody who has lived in a house with two gamers knows that it's easily a cause of divorce, having difficulty sharing a console. So I've struggled to play as much of things as I would like. Having Minecraft on a Realm allows me to play it in the Windows 10 app on my laptop. So we have frequently had nights now where I'm playing Minecraft on my laptop downstairs, and he's playing, Skyrim at the moment. He's replaying that now with all the mods. It's been nice. It's kind of one of those cute romantic things where a couple is, chilling out on the sofa playing video games, or I'm more of the couples snuggling while they read kind of thing, but reading isn't really my partner's forte, or is not his favorite thing to do. So I'm going to have to just survive with playing video games at the same time. What have we done with since the last show? Because it's been, I think, a month now since we did our last world building show. I was not feeling well. I'm feeling better now. Of course, then I've also got that weird, icky feeling like I'm getting a cold. A lot of people are getting colds right now and freaking out that it might be the COVID. Yeah. So, I've taken extra good care of myself today, so hopefully that won't get in the way. But we're back now. And hopefully soon I'll be streaming every week, actually. I just need to try and get a handle on the schedule of uploading things and tweaking stuff and writing the text for things in between shows. Since the last show, I've done a little bit of organization of the theory section. Let's switch over. Here we go. That's better. And forgot what I'm doing. Here we go. Okay. I've done a little bit of reorganization of the theory section here. There we go. So I've left my sort of generic stuff. In fact, I can absolutely delete this. Move to trash. Why is this? There we go. Move to trash again. Wonder why that's nested. Deleting something should probably not be a nested option. So my overlooking stuff is still at the top. Master timeline, my list of questions I want to get around to someday. Then I've grouped stuff that's related. So starting with talking about the Triad and the 8 lorddoms, and then 8 lorddoms, first flight, the bandit lorddom, all of this stuff is related. So that's all in a group. And then talking about the development of the kingdom in the first place. I'm sorry, I've got something weird and itchy in my nose. Ugh. Make it stop. Oh. I hope it's gone away. Okay. Actually, now that I look at this, I'm not sure why this particular section is different to the one before. But okay, we'll leave it with my first instinct there. No, I'm fine. I've just got that weird, like, niggly feeling in my nostril. Like I'm not like I'm gonna sneeze, but like there's a hair out of place and it's driving me nuts. And in fact, I'm gonna stop talking about it because it's making it worse. And this is more of the sort of looking forward section of how people are doing something and why they're doing it. I think I added this document here, the evolution of a town. This was something I had written a while ago, and was in my handwritten notes. I did a lot of research on how long it takes to build a castle. And so I tried to incorporate that into like just the general infrastructure of things and what has to be built in order for what has to exist in a settlement in order for it to be considered these different types of settlements, starting at, day 0 from a camp and day, 1 million to as a seafront town, which is sort of the end goal really for what Millenhold is. And what are the different stages in between and how long does it take to get there and what the elements of that are. That was a really interesting little thought project there. This is also me thinking about that. A lot of the stuff came up with me just trying to draw a map of Millenhold. And then suddenly going, but I don't know what anything looks like. And I'm not the sort of person, at least with this setting, because this is an unusual setting. It's sort of apocalypse meets low fantasy. Yeah, 30 years to build a castle. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I was going for more around 20. Simply because I think that the foundations already vaguely existed and they didn't have to cut a lot of the blocks because they recovered them from the previous settlement, as well as this is the sort of thing that the entire population, all 300, somewhere around here I have, oh yeah, it's further down the page. My working out how many people there are. So let's see, we've got 175 people involved in shipbuilding, 100 builders and related, 165 stewards and guardians. 165 guardians. That's not counting stewards, actually. I suppose that might be sort of in this group. 50 hunters, fishers, and farmers, and 25 in sort of other jobs. This was, 50 people to build Galadon, which is the castle that I based this research on. They're sort of, Galadon is finished-ish now. Like the central building is finished. It took them 25 years, 50 people who actually all had to be taught how to do it while they were doing it. So that was definitely something to take into consideration. Starting from scratch they did as well, but they used all like original medieval tools to build it. It's a really interesting project if you ever look that up. That's in France. And then I just was Googling like what percentage of the population is required to just, you know, just farm in order to feed everybody and that sort of thing. So what are we looking at? 175, 275, 3, 4, 40, 490, or 515 people. So we're looking at approximately 500 people who live in Nillenhold. And where was I going with that now? I got distracted. I mean, because it's an unusual setting, I didn't want to just do, you know, your classic Dyson Logos settlement map. Well, technically he's not really the settlement map guy. But he's been doing a lot of them lately. If you keep an eye on his Twitter, it's really fun to watch just the beautiful stuff he comes with, and it's all originally hand drawn. It's just miraculous. The kind of stuff that he does. And he's been experimenting with digitizing his like crosshatch pattern that he does around the edges of dungeons. That the pattern that he's known for really well. And I think if you sign up for his Patreon, you can get access to that stuff. I've seen a lot of Fantasy City generators, not that one in particular. No, I'll have to have a look at that sometime. But I think the main spanner in the works of using something like a Fantasy City generator for Nillenhold is I know it's on a Crescent Bay. And it's hard to get any of them that have a land feature as a setting that you can set before it starts generating your city. I've spent way too much time just clicking generate buttons on a lot of Fantasy City generators. And just never being happy with stuff. And the other spanner in the work is the fact that the architecture is just a part of how I world build. I think very visually in trying to understand how people work, like what a culture is, what a even when people describe their own settings to me, I think I'm putting their words into pictures in my head and parsing it through that visual image that I build. I'm not a very good oral tradition person. I'm not good at understanding what people say to me when they talk. I have to assemble the little bits of it that I get into like patterns and pictures, and then I can get what you're saying. So I'm very focused on the visual. So architecture is important. These cast words that I've described to you before is important to these people, and these people have only ever lived in cast wards. They're not going to suddenly start living in European style medieval single family homes. So I had to take in consideration that actually, yeah, the architecture is going to be different. There's going to be a lot of these large, long buildings surrounding courtyards and whatnot. So, yeah, that basically my map for Nillenhold has to be hand drawn, which is fine. I've done a little bit of map building I think you've seen my drawing of what's it? Penhaven. I wonder if we can. Where is the drawing? Where's the map? Nope. Where did you go? Where have you gone? I know you're in here somewhere. Oh. Oh, I've only put it in the player's guide at the moment. But this I hand drew. Was playing with my gray markers, my value markers, which is fun. I've never worked with artists' markers before. And this was basically my first ever attempt, which is not the worst. And I also love working in terms of value. I think it's a really interesting exercise. But this is a very classic design. In retrospect, it probably doesn't really suit the culture that these people came from, but granted, this is a half-elf establishment, and they left Memony City before the Exodus. So they might have had a different idea of how they wanted to live. They might have been forced to live in family groups because all they had were, tents and whatever little bits of things that they could steal. And for the 100 or so years they lived in Founder's Grove, which is out here, it's very likely that they wouldn't have been able to live in the same large family groups, or the large social groups that they would have done while in Memony City. Also, some of those people may not have experienced that in the same way that the humans did, that type of living. They may have had to have lived in a cupboard in order to keep from being discovered. They may have had to live in the walls or something. So they would have a very, very different idea of what living was supposed to look like. I do, however, I don't know if we can't really focus in on this. Right here, the boarding house is basically the largest building outside of the inn and the stables in all of town. And that is actually built in a sort of Memony City longhouse style. That is a place where multiple people are meant to live. Like, because if you're just a traveler and you need a few nights at most, you'll stay at the inn. But if you're coming to stay in Penhaven to, visit family, or say you're a bit transient at the moment, you don't have anywhere of your own to live yet, there is a resident in Penhaven boarding house who has recently moved to Penhaven from Nillenhold. And she lives there for now until she makes it as a goat herder. That's her dream. Lovely Charity, the tiefling. And it's got Mrs. Everly, this really lovely, sweet, mothering creature, who's great. I did a session with Rick, actually, and another player that we don't play with anymore, and I really loved doing a scene with Charity and Mrs. Everly that was it was fun, And playing two characters at the same time is not always fun. But Charity and Everly were good. They were good. I enjoyed that. It's more challenging when you play on like a virtual tabletop by chat, when you have to type everything out and switch between characters, and it gets to be a bit of a circus. But I enjoyed that. Okay, let's get us back to this group. So yeah, I added that stuff. Stuff from my notes. I think the bandit lorddom situation was something that I put some thought into to get started. The first flight was sent to the bandit lorddom's location, hang on a second. Right, so the first flight went to the location that is now known as the bandit lorddom. The first flight sent to that lorddom did attend the first Lord's Moot 8 years after the first flight was sent out. They reported a successful establishment. They made absolutely no mention of bandits in the area. The second Lord's Moot, however, a bunch of strangers showed up who were bandits, and they described themselves as the mighty and rightful claimants to the land and governance of it. They expected to be recognized as members of the Lord's Moot, and they did agree to the terms of the first flight. But this would have been essentially one of the splinter groups, quite possibly people who had escaped Mimini City prior to Exodus. Some rebels. People living in a slightly more anarchic faction to what those from Mimini would have been doing. Oh, I just got a follow. Yay. Love follows. Who followed me? Thank you, Emiko. Brilliant. Very exciting. Very exciting. Okay. Travelers passing by this bandit lorddom, which I'm picturing in my head is going to be like smack in the middle of a few of the remaining 6 lorddoms. These travelers report highwaymen and tollmen having set up camp at the edges of the lorddom, claiming tolls for permission to travel through their land. It seems quite common for a traveler to run into more than one of these groups while traveling in the same direction, and the legitimate ones are indistinguishable from those who are presumably illegitimate. No one totally understands. Yeah, a few lorddoms definitely share borders with the bandit lorddom, and stories of like border kerfuffles. Because that's really all you get at the moment are kerfuffles. They're not uncommon. Those things happen. I'm still like working on my picture of what the 6 lorddoms look like. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that. Let's see. Oh, there's now a page on where does the ocean get its name? I needed a name for the ocean. So I've named it, and again, this is my sort of like toe dip into conlang. Is trying to find out what the roots of the words are, where they come from. So like Kinde is the name of the world, and Inda vaguely means land. So when naming Wataluna, that sort of, well, no, Kinde just means world. Sorry, I'm getting that mixed up. Kinde literally just means world. The Una part of Wataluna means land. So, and then the Wattle part means human. So Waterluna means essentially human lands. So I've extended that into now we're talking about water. So it made it so that Isa means body of water. And Xritag means not known. Now, I don't know if everyone had this education, but when I was a kid, I was taught that X is pronounced X, right? But how many words in English do you know where X is pronounced that way? It's just not. However, there are languages in the world in which X can be pronounced with that sort of KS sound. Spanish, often has that X, pronunciation of an X. And I just thought it made it sound sort of, I don't know, interesting and exotic. So the ocean is called Xritisa, which means the basically unknown body of water. And then this is where we get into a bit of lore on elven culture. Elves consider it the height of sophistication that one pursues knowledge within an infinite realm. Accepting that one may never achieve complete understanding, if an elf is trying to impress someone at a party, it will emphasize the novelty of their subject, while dramatizing how vast a field it is to study. The ocean is a common metaphor for the infinitely unknowable. Marine researchers, along with astronomers, are something akin to mavericks in elven society. Embracing uncertainty is one thing, but the ocean is considered a realm of knowledge with no handholds. When someone is being humble about their academic area, it is common to say, "But I'm no marine biologist." Elven parties. Elven parties are well, I suppose elven parties are like any academic party you've ever been to or heard of. Think like Frasier, those snobby kind of wine-filled events in which everyone talks about their area of expertise and tries to one-up each other, and I just find that funny. I think that fits with the sort of assholery of elves. I think they're very snobby. And they're very academically oriented, so obviously, of course, that's going to translate into them one-upping each other academically in some way. Never been to an academic party. Actually, I'm not sure I've been to an academic party, but I have been to parties with groups of people who were very intellectual, and they drive me effing insane. It's funny because now, many years later, I find myself like getting into that frame of mind of like reveling into the intellectualism of things. But I'm glad that I've done it in my 30s and not in my 20s, because I think when you're in your 20s, you don't really understand what you're talking about to quite the level, to a very sophisticated level, and which is what makes it more annoying for people who aren't in that frame of mind when you're having that conversation. These friends of mine, they drove me insane. You couldn't sit down with them before they were started talking about Jack Kerouac and some weird psychological theory, philosophy, or whatever that you've never heard of. Yeah, they were insufferable. But, I mean, that's what you get for working in a bookstore. You end up hanging out around these people. It's inevitable. I mean, I could probably hold my own now these days, but do I want to? I'm not sure. yeah, so we've named the ocean Xrtisa. And I think that the elves don't distinguish one particular part of water from another. So, like, there isn't an Indian Ocean and an Atlantic Ocean, a Pacific Ocean. It's all just Xrtisa. What else? What else did we do? Okay, so we named the ocean. Oh, I've been talking about how much I hated the names that I had for the places and people in West Timbland. So the town I had originally called Montmeyeur, in which I got to attempt my terrible French pronunciation. I have instead named it to Bridgend. If you look at my post yesterday on world building, on the world building subreddit, I was talking about how much you can differentiate to small regions that are next to each other. And in this case, because they've only existed for 25 years, and prior to that, they were all the same people in Mimini City, I don't think I can differentiate them as much as having one inspired by French culture and one inspired by Welsh culture. So I've decided to stick with Welsh. I think the Welsh get ignored a lot in pop culture, so I'd like to, give them a little bit of up. And of course, I don't live in Wales. I just live really close to it. I have several Welsh friends because of that. So I could definitely use some help with that. So if you're Welsh, or living in Wales, and I ever goof anything up a little bit, don't be afraid to let me know. I could really use the help. I am, however, not very good with the Welsh language, so I don't think you're going to see a lot of things Welsh language wise, although of course Guntaf is Welsh language. And that is my best guess as to how to pronounce that word. I think it means first. Again, this is some Google Translate nonsense, so do tell me off if it doesn't work. So yes, I've named this town Bridgend because it's the town that's building the bridge. I think there's like 1 million little villages in Wales called Bridgend. So that seems very suitable to me. So Lord Diziem is now Lord Aaron. I was looking for something slightly snobby sounding. And so his son is also called Aaron. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. And there we go. That is done. Oh, the river to the east of Nillenhold, I've named the Swift. And there's a lake in that area as well that I've called Lake Isa. Which, of course, just means like lake water. But, I mean, that is literally what half of the names of lakes in the world mean, just in different languages. This is something I was looking up. I was like, are any of these names really that interesting or unique? And even if you look at the ones that are named in indigenous languages, you will find that in that indigenous language, it probably just means water. Or something water like wet or swift or, something like that. That's generally what they mean. So I grew up nearby and on Lake Michigan, and the word Michigan basically means water. It seems very unimaginative, and it's not something you would have automatically realized, I think, about the way the world is. Okay, let's get on. Yeah, it's almost 9. We've been at this for an hour, which is fine because I think there isn't going to be a whole lot to say in this section. I did finish typing up Nillenhold, and it's on the World Anvil, so you can read it there. East Timbland and Further. Origins. So, I put in these headlines before we started. Because I didn't think we wanted to we had anything to say about like architecture or really economy, or government, because we're talking about like just regions. So East Timbland's origins. I'm not sure. What do we have to say about that? East Timbland. Okay, so during the Exodus. Okay. No, sorry, during the occupation. I think there definitely would have been logging operations. And would there have been quarrying? It's an interesting question. Maybe they stole already carved rock from this city that, the town that was where Nillenhold is now. So a lot of the stone that makes up the buildings that exist in Memney City either was taken from the mountainside itself or was taken from Nillenhold. And you wouldn't exactly know that having lived in Memney City because the buildings are like rendered over, so you can't see the rock that used to exist there, or the rock that makes up the walls. It's also possible that the walls rock isn't heavily used in the walls. It's just a lot of wattle and daub with render over, which I think is how I've described most of Nillenhold's buildings, because it's a construction method that is quick and cheap. Especially in this area, there's a lot of mud, there's a lot of clay, there's a lot of trees to make strips out of. Lime, probably not so much, but I'm guessing that concrete is definitely a thing at this point. In fact, I think if you Google it, you will find that concrete is actually was invented a lot sooner than you think. When was concrete invented? 1300 BC. So there's definitely concrete around. Middle Eastern builders, pounded clay fortresses. That's exactly the type of architecture that I'm talking about. So it's almost like unintended concrete, because it was clay mixed with limestone, which is more or less what concrete is. So yes, that's something you may have learned today. Yeah, no, concrete itself is really old. Things like, what do they call it? When it's got like the rock mixed in. Cement. Cement is newer. I think it took... Here, actually, let's look it up again, since we're Googling. It's next option. 1824 is when cement was invented. Yeah, there's a process that cement goes through, and then I think the addition of rock makes it more stable, stronger. I don't know this off the top of my head. I'd have to ask my partner, who trained as a civil servant. He's not one, but went to school for all of that fun stuff. Where were we? Here we go. Okay. So likely the walls of all the buildings, except obviously the elves, like say the walls of the Castward buildings in Nillenholt or in Mimini City are built from bits of rock. What do you call that when the rock is just sort of like piled together like rubble? It's a bit like that. The elves buildings are probably nicer, but still concrete rendered. So you wouldn't know if the rock was particularly native to the Faceless Mountain or to Nillenholt's quarry. I know that there is an ancient mine in the... Excuse me. I was complaining the other day at a meeting. I can't seem to sit down in front of my computer and talk at a webcam without getting a bit belchy. Doesn't seem to matter what I drink. I've been drinking still things for months now, and I still struggle. I think it's the talking. I don't talk much in my normal life. Something about talking makes all of that happen. I don't know. And I guarantee you, with all this like talking to people that I've been doing with the stream and with the new project, I talk to other people a lot less. And actually, yeah, even some of my friends that I know, that I know I've been a little quiet lately, and I'm sorry for that, but I'm struggling to adjust to being social again after things got really quiet after quarantine. I'm normally not terribly chatty, but once the pandemic hit and everybody else went indoors as well, it was much easier to not talk a lot. And I like not talking a lot. Which is ironic because I'm doing this. Let's see. Okay. During occupation, what other uses? Let's look at the geography here. Okay. So we've got Cloud Valley, which is the space between the Faceless Mountain and the seaside regions. We have Guntav's Wood, which is the bit of wood. So we have, let's see, we've got Guntav's Road divides the valley from the seaside horizontally, we'll say. Cloud Valley is actually really dangerous. Cloud Valley is the kind of place that's like one of those deep, heavy, dark forests that ancient forests that no one really goes into, and so all of the big, scary, indigenous, monstrous creatures all live there. And of course, the ancient mine is smack dab in the middle of it. So that's always a fun little adventure hook. I think it's called Cloud Valley because because the tree canopy is so dense and the ground is kind of uneven, that it makes it just look, it makes the region look like a big green cloud, especially when you're up high in the mountains looking down on it. I think originally I had wanted to just call it Cloud Forest, but I think it's a valley down there from between the foothills and the seaside. To me, that makes it even more sort of like dark and mysterious, is if it's a valley. So you've got Gunthav's Road, which divides the valley from the seaside. And that road basically had to cut through the forest when it was made. And so what resulted from that is a little wood on the south side of Gunthav's Road between Nillenhold and Penhaven. And that little wood is called Gunthav's Wood. Then you've got Penhaven to the west, right? So let's see. Left border of East Timbland is the River Timble. And that, yeah. Well, the River Timble, the further north you go, the more of a sort of massive gorge it becomes, quite deep and quite treacherous. There's a long way to fall up by Mimini to actually end up in the river. East is... Now this is a good question. Oh. Yeah. This should actually be west border, not left. I think I want to say that the east, sort of the northeast border, is at Lake Isa. Possibly the east border is sort of vague. Since it's unpopulated, yeah, that's what I'll say. Unpopulated and vague. Because each lorddom only has one settlement. But they divided up the land that was sort of easily accessed by Mimini City so that there was room to grow. And so that there wouldn't be a lot of conflicts. So there's a lot of wild country in between these towns where a lot of their borders exist. So I think there's a lot of these lorddoms have borders that aren't really finite or clear. North border is the foothills. Well, no, I suppose it is really just the faceless mountain. Because the foothills is supposed part of it. Because Mimini City has no access to the foothills, really. South border is the ocean. Then you've got, let's see, you've got Finney's Marsh, which is sort of southeast of Penhaven. So if we go back to this map, you can see Finney's Marsh is right here. So the seaside is down here on this edge of the map. And you've got the wood, and then you've got some beach and probably some dunes here. And then the marsh sort of blends in with the edge of the wood. And I know, stylistic wise, this wood is drawn with a hard edge, but it's really more of a sort of crossfade between the two areas. And so you've got this marsh or bog. It's a salt marsh where the river water mingles and sort of, it's almost kind of like an eddy. So if you think about it in terms of like deltas, a lot of deltas form because solid land masses, like bits of rock in the crust, will gather the sediments that are brought down the river, and they will collect behind bits of rock. But you also get situations where the current of an ocean meets with the current of a river, and it causes a sort of eddying effect, and then it will bring sediments back. So what we've got here is we've got this river that comes out of hard rock and is quite deep up here north of the steps. North of the ferries line. And that's where you can fish for sturgeon, is within this deep gorge between Penhaven and Menominee City. And sturgeon are a fun, interesting fish that tend to live in deep, cold rivers. And so there's definitely a channel in the River Timble that is quite deep, leading out to sea. But the rest of it is actually really shallow. And so on the east side of River Timble, you've got Finney's Marsh, which is sort of one of those salty eddies that brings sediment back and causes a bog. Then on the west side of River Timble, you've actually got a really big delta, because the land out there is actually really, really flat. You've got the Kalanook Steppes. So the west side of the River Timble, do I have a picture somewhere? I did draw something. Doop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doo. Yep, it's going to be in here. It's going to be in this one. Here we go. That is vantage point from the ferry dock. Here we go. So there is, flipping back and forth right here. Here's a little viewpoint. Where is it? Right here. In Penhaven. On the cliff. It's really quite high up. And standing there, you can look across to the delta and the Kalanook Steppes. So right here, you've got a little bit of there's a little bit of a forest coming off of the western foothills of the Faceless Mountains. And then that ends at the delta. And then you've got the steps leading out into the horizon right here. These drawings were a really fun experiment with perspective in landscaping, and which is not something I'm very good at. I had to look at a lot of pictures in a very objective artist's frame of mind in order to try to draw stuff like this. I need to do more of this. I certainly like it for GMing. I think it makes for a really interesting inspiration as a GM. But yeah, delta on the west side. So because we've got no rock formations out there, and we've still got a lot of that eddying going on, we get this huge delta with these little bits of little islands that form from the silt and sediment and plant life. back to our main one. Boop. So, okay. Finney's Marsh. Then, of course, there's the plateau featuring Penaven. I suppose we could talk about River Timble. That stuff that I described about the shape of River Timble. And what else have we got? Oh, then we've also got the North Road going to Mimini, which is also a new road. Because previously the elves had the bridge and they went west of the River Timble. They had very little interest except for some of the logging and possible quarrying, which they would have done by probably by some like cavern routes. That's what I'm picturing with the way that Mimini was designed. What if I could draw this? What can we open on my desktop here that I could draw with? This is new. Do a little drawing on here with my mouse, which would make it, of course, terrible. Okay, just opened you Inkscape and you're not doing anything. Oh, there we go. Yay! Okay. Let's see, can we switch to landscape? No. How do we change the artboard? I'm never really good at this stuff. This is a category of digital art that I'm not really familiar with. I'm more of a like Photoshop oriented. I'm not gonna worry about it. Okay. A pencil. Okay, so you've got a mountain, right? Okay, and Mimini City is up here. Right, on the side of the mountain. And then right down here, you've got the river. And the river goes this way. And then you've got back here, you've got more mountains. Right? And I think that if you did a cross section of the mountain, there would be like a path cut into the mountain somehow. You'd have like rooms here, and then like this would be a room, and then maybe there's a path that goes out this way, and then this leads out to the cloud forest, where you've got somebody doing some oh, that's a terrible axe. This is how good of a drawer I am. Yay. You get it though, right? So I imagine that there is somehow some kind of path that leads out to the edge of the cloud forest, like in the foothills. That there's Thanks. There's also a path that leads out to the river, and that is where a lot of the shipping was done. This is why there isn't, during the occupation, there wasn't a city where Nillenhold is, because they didn't need it. Ships sailed up the River Timble and docked on the side of the mountain, deep in the gorge, and there was a way for them to get goods up into the city through the mountain. Yeah, I think elves are they find nature very sacred, but rock is not nature as far as an elf is concerned. I think, rock is the purview of dwarves, and so the elves are not concerned about shaping rock to their own purposes, even though they're not naturally good at it, because they're not dwarves, obviously. Grubby dwarves, that's right. Greedy dwarves. It'll be really interesting if we ever get around to talking about dwarves in this setting. They're greedy, which I suppose is not an uncommon trait of dwarves in fantasy settings, but the way in which my dwarves are greedy is very different. There's a little bit of human sacrifice involved. No, not human, dwarven sacrifice. Okay. So what is now East Timbland would have been largely what do you call it? Like wild, untouched, left to wilderness at the beginning of the occupation. Elves unconcerned, or not unconcerned. They definitely, that's a tough one. I imagine they definitely had teams of rangers traveling through the area, observing nature in its most wild form, or wild after they decided and drew a line between what's natural and what's not. Because again, we're talking about research, academics, which is largely what the elves do. And so even though they would have wanted nature to be wild, they would not have ignored it. They would have observed it. Largely left to wilderness at the beginning of the occupation. Okay. What do you call it when a ruin is basically just a pile of rocks in the woods? It's not a ruin because it's not like sides of buildings or anything. It's just clearly man-made piles of rocks. You think something was here. There are signs of ancient human life here and there throughout, but the elves did not build anything permanent here. That's different when we get to West Timbland. When we talk about West Timbland, and actually I'll make this note, we can talk about, I'll put it in Origins too, the ziggurats, the elven ziggurats. And I'm not gonna say anything else about them because I'm mysterious like that. Okay. Left to wilderness. What else are we going on here? Okay, so we've talked about like basic geography of the place. What are the borders of East Timbland? What did it look like during the occupation? This should be indented. Let's see. What did it look like possibly before the occupation? That remains. That they didn't build anything that remains or leave any signs of using this land. Oh, there you go, doing a proper belch. What is wrong with me? I'm so sorry. You know, it might be some of the tension as well, because I feel like I breathe in a lot, but then maybe I don't exhale as much. I need to breathe better. Has anybody ever, like, started working out after not working out and realized that they don't know how to breathe anymore? That was always a problem with me. When it comes to exercising, I always have to remind myself how to breathe. Never work out? Oh, I'm sorry, Rick. You should. It's really great. I love it. I mean, I know I'm sort of naturally sort of athletically disposed. So I love sport. I love working out, which is part of the reason it sucks so much to have chronic fatigue, because I don't get to do that anymore. Yes, anyway, exercise is fabulous. Do it. Everyone should do it. Everyone seems to get injured exercising. You get injured when you are either learning to exercise and not doing it very smartly, or you get injured when you're doing a kind of exercise that involves pushing your limits, venturing into unknown ground when there's a great amount of challenge, like when there's competitiveness involved. I mean, there's definitely realms of exercise in which you want to really stretch your limits and find out what you're capable of. And I suppose that's the complicated thing about exercise, is that you never really know what you're capable of until you push your limits. That's how I got my shoulder injury, actually. Is from putting too much weight on some press-ups I was doing, and really stressed out something in my shoulder. And then, because I was doing a lot of public transport at the time, because this is my dominant arm, I kept accidentally using this arm after the injury to like hold on to the poles on buses. And if you've ever been on a bus, that's always not great. So I kept re-injuring it within a space of time because I kept using this arm to keep myself stable on a bus. And it just, yeah, it wasn't getting better. And then I got the chronic fatigue. And that made it worse again. So fun times. Yeah, so are you gonna get injured? Yes. Is getting injured all that bad? No, depends on the injury. Yeah. It's just like sweating. People are like, oh, I don't want to sweat. What's so bad about getting sweaty? What's so bad about getting some boo-boos and some injuries? Injuries are cool. You get over them most of the time. Okay. But you get scars. It's all life. It's all stories you can tell. Can't go around hiding yourself from stories, because maybe you get one that doesn't involve getting sweaty and broken. Okay. So I think there isn't a whole lot going on here that that we haven't talked about already. It's mostly just geography. I would say if we were to say anything about special features of East Timbland, we might talk about economies of the land, if that's what you want to call it. What is the land itself rich in? So we've got bog iron in Finney's Marsh. Got sturgeon in the River Timble. Forest Cloud Valley. Contains a particularly dense forest in which scary things live. Scary and human things. I don't think. I'm trying to remember if how well known it is that there's a mine here. I'm gonna say foothills of baseless mountain contain are pockmarked with caverns. No. Cave systems. Some of which are used by Mimini City, and some are rebel hideouts. We'll just say that. So in my mind, this is how most of the rebels got out of Mimini City. They snuck through the cavern network under the city and left through the foothills in East Timbland. Maybe that's something we should go here. Home to many rebel, ex-rebel, we'll call them ex-rebel groups, especially in the foothills of the mountain. Yep. Okay. I think to the east of the city, east of the town, east of Nillenhold, there are several sort of splinter groups. They would be like not beholden to Mimini City. There are several like communes and small settlements that not branched off, separated from Mimini after the Exodus. Yeah, okay. So yeah, I think East Timbland, sort of east of Nillenhold, is where a lot of this sort of stuff will feature. And I think I want to leave it undefined who's who and where they are, because I think that's not something that is widely known. I think they sort of maybe, except for one particular commune that I have in mind, which is well, it's the sex workers commune. There most certainly was a breeders caste in Mimini City. And I think this caste found themselves particularly wanting to separate themselves from the elven occupation. And so when it came to being a society, I think they were particularly traumatized with the idea of being under anyone's thumb. So they left Mimini City. They decided to create their own, small holding or whatever. And once Mimini City moved out into the lands around the mountain, they rediscovered the settlement, and found that they weren't doing so well because these people didn't really know how to survive. They didn't know how to live off the land. They had no education. As far as the elves were concerned, all they were good for was breeding. They were, studs and baby carriers. And I think that this is a settlement that is rediscovering their self-respect, I suppose, in a job that they themselves weren't particularly happy with at the time. So what they know how to do is they know how to breed. So travelers pass through, and the people of this town trade their skills. They barter their skills. So they get fed, and they get new and interesting products, and they can live their lives because they have a skill that they know how to trade. And I don't think anyone sees any particular shame in it. The only shame that existed in it was in being used by the elves in that way. There's something about, I'm not going to get into it too much, but yeah. So I think this is something that exists. And I think not only do they trade in sex work, but I think that they also trade in children. Quite possibly, it is a place to go when you want to adopt a child, or if you're looking someone to carry a baby for you. Say you don't have any children, and say you don't. Say you have a pair of gay men who want to have children. They would go to this settlement and they would adopt a child there, or they'd get a child of their own on one of the members of this settlement, one of the citizens there. Something I definitely need to think more about that. So that settlement would be a known entity. Yeah, okay, so we're gonna, including and I'm just gonna put sex work because I need to put some more thought into the culture aspects of this. It's gonna be right on the road. Everybody's gonna know where it is. But elsewhere in the forests east of Nillenhold, there are going to be settlements sort of like here and there in the woods that nobody's entirely sure of. Some might be bandits, some might just be like anarchist communes, some might be super hippie communes, some might be people trying to live their lives in the most elven way possible, and that might be part of the reason that they're not a part of Mimini, because Mimini told them to get the F out. That is probably going to end up being described with a bunch of roll tables, and some wilderness travel. Wilderness travel is something that I definitely want to spend some time thinking about in terms of this setting. And if I do end up writing an RPG for this setting, then a lot of thought is going to be put into how wilderness travel works. Similarly, I need to put a lot of thought into monsters, because there's no such thing as a monstrous race in this setting. And because it's a very undeveloped setting, and also there are no planes, there are no gods, there's nothing celestial, there's nothing demonic. I need to make what in any other setting would be considered boringly ordinary. I need to make it extraordinary. So a lot of thought is going to be put into that as well. So, okay. We've talked about the cave systems. So the lake side is the border there, but the lake itself is not really the purview of Nillenhold. Likely it's the next lorddom over. One of the next lorddoms over. So let's get into, in the little bit of time we have left, the 6 eastern lorddoms. Now, if we go, let's Let's open up our second pane here. And where is our 8 lorddoms tasks? So we've got West Timbland. I'll write this in here. Bold West Timbland. Okay. Then here we've got East Timbland. So in one of the furthest points, we've got the Bandit Lord, who's actually surrounded by several of these other ones. This one, it has to be defined by a ziggurat in some way. This one has to be defined by some kind of standing human ruin. Okay, let's see. No, we're gonna do bullet point. Ziggurat. Important. And for this one, standing human ruins. Important. What was the original purpose of the Bandit Lorddom? This is something I need to work out. Like, what 8 things, if you could break down society's central needs into 8 things, how would you break that down? That's some real philosophical shit. I feel like I need to get back into the Greeks, trying to figure this stuff out. Read me some Aristotle. So the farming one, I think, needs to have a big fat river and floodplains. And something that's, something that's obviously good for growing things on. It needs to be near water. No, so, okay, maybe this isn't quite... Because this type of farming is too dependent on the whims of weather. That whole big river floodplain stuff. Nile farming. There's definitely got to be lots of water available. And wide open areas, not very rocky. Maybe there's a really like British style rolling hills kind of area. Oh, I know what I was thinking of. This needs to be close to the wold. Yeah. for trade and knowledge from the halflings. So I don't know if we talked about the Wold, but the Wold is an island off of Waterluna, and it's where the halflings live. And despite being so close to the halflings, there isn't a lot of interaction with them, partially because of the elves, because of the way the occupation worked for the halflings. The halflings were not enslaved. They were just supervised. So kind of almost like the Roman occupation of the British Isles. They would just sort of show up with some kind of governor or whatever, and they'd have their own like policing force. And as long as you behaved, you got to go on your merry way and do your own thing. And the elves would have kept them largely to the island instead of traveling around, because obviously they were quite precious about spreading out more than was necessary. That whole preserving nature thing. But the halflings didn't really mind. They were quite happy to surrender to the elves as long as they were left to their idyllic pastoral lives. So I think the Wold itself is one of those like big rolling hill islands. It is kind of my Britain analogy in this setting, I suppose. That's how very Tolkien of me. So yeah, it makes sense that there would definitely be a lot of open areas and rolling hills, because it would share a sort of landscape with the Wold. It would just be part of the mainland as opposed to the island. Yeah, we still need to figure out this one. I can't put philosophy there because philosophy is dealt with by the philosophers in Mimini City. I need to find a way of querying the internet on this question. I think that's the main trouble that I'm going to have, and I have had with this, is that I haven't really known how to query the Google. Yeah, any Googling that I've done so far has resulted in really unhelpful archaeological frameworks, or purely intangible philosophical frameworks that, again, don't really fit. I think this is something I need to pose to world building. Although I struggle with them as well. The subreddit, I mean. It's hard to have a conversation with any world building group without them assuming that you're talking about Tolkien-esque medieval era high magic fantasy. And you have to go into a tremendous amount of detail to get them out of that frame of mind. And that makes it a bit difficult. But yeah, as soon as they get the idea it's fantasy, they've only got like one very concrete idea of what it looks like. It's just, I guess, the way how people like to work. I might even tie back into that whole fantasy is conservative concept. The number 8 is important, though. I can't change that, just in case that's what you're thinking. 8 is hugely important in this setting. 8 is a big deal. 8 is almost like a lucky number. I think this is something I'm going to have to put some work into in the next couple of weeks. I think that's what I'm going to focus on. Yeah. And if I do figure it out, and I can type this up by the next stream that I do in 2 weeks, then you'll probably just see it on World Vandenville. If not, maybe we'll spend the next stream Googling, trying to figure out the answer to this. I don't know. Also, if you think you know the answer to this, or can think of a resource that can help me answer this, DM me on Twitter at TempestTT Games. Yeah. Have a peek at my post on the subreddit. If you get a chance. That's reddit.com/r/worldbuilding. It's a good place. Very exciting place. I'm of the Tempest there. Usually anywhere that I'm not Tempest TT Games, I'm going to be of the Tempest. So check me out there, or just Tempest. Yeah, Google and Thesaurus are like my favorite world building tools. They're the best. But sometimes you have to know how to approach it in order to get something out of it. I think there's definitely a skill to be had in the act of Googling. Some people have it, some people don't. Between my partner and I, there's definitely a disparity. My partner struggles to get the answers he wants out of Google. And then I'm like, you're asking the wrong question, and I'll go and I'll just type something in, and there, see, there's your answer. And he goes, oh, how'd you do that? I don't know. It's just the right thing to ask Google. I don't know. Understanding computer logic probably helps a bit. But then my partner very much understands computer logic, so I don't know. Anyway, I think that'll do for tonight. Yeah. Have a look at my Reddit post. Get a hold of me on Twitter. Yeah, my Twitter is vaguely interesting. I'm trying to remind myself to actually participate in Twitter again. Do a lot of rehoming dogs retweets, and try to stick with the TRPG and board games concept. There's a lot more conversation in tabletop role-playing games than there is in board games, unfortunately, and a lot of the board game stuff is not as accessible as the role-playing game stuff is, largely because you either have to spend a lot of money on lots of board games, board games are expensive, or you have to have done a whole lot of critical thinking and even read some texts on board game design to really have good conversations on the subject. Whereas I think RPG is a lot more of an everyman's tabletop genre. Excuse me. But I do try to have a conversation on Twitter on board games if I can manage it. Anyway, I hope you have a great night and a great fortnight until my next stream. And I will talk to you later. Have a good one. Take care of yourself. Bye.